Heavy metal. Ah yes, the brutal tones, psychosexual themes, the mosh pits, the theatrics. It's all a part of the show. But some people, typically some old people, think it's more than that. Some even claim that it has an adverse influence on society. I can't completely blame them. For example, the death metal band Cannibal Corpse's album Tomb of the Mutilated is an extreme example that contributes to the negative stigma. I'm not going to read the track listing myself, but here they are. Pretty brutal, huh? But is heavy metal really such a negative art form? Can it even be considered art? I say no, it's not as terrible as these geezers make it out to be, and yes, it's definitely an art form that admittedly can take some time to understand. I'm not the first to confront issues dealing with heavy metal stereotypes. Megadeth, one of the big four thrash metal bands up there with Metallica, Slayer, and Anthrax, had confronted the negative image of metalheads in their 1986 hit single, Peace Sells. Written by frontman Dave Mustaine, an infamous heavy metal icon known for being the original lead guitarist of Metallica before being kicked out and robbed of his material. In Peace Sells, stereotypes he includes are atheism, criminality, and apathy. But why should Dave Mustaine, former dopehead walking heavy metal cliche, be the one to dispel these stereotypes? He shouldn't be. He talks about how he abides by the system, how he pays his bills on time, and how he gets like he's not anti-religious because he, and I quote, talks to God, which is worded in the most egomaniacal, schizophrenic way possible. You know, looking back, the scene where the kid's dad turns off the TV to watch the news is so corny and laughable that it deserves the parody Brian Posehn, comedian and metalhead, lays out in his music video Metal by Numbers.
What is this garbage you're watching? I want to watch the news. This is the news. That's not the news, it's the music video.
What do you think of that?
You're the news. You are.
What are some of the negative stereotypes that metalheads encounter? I think number one should be definitely anti-religious sentiment and Satanism. Slayer, the archetypal, supposedly satanic band known for such hits as Hell Awaits, South of Heaven, and Altar of Sacrifice. It's a really great example because a lot of people think they really are trying to push some sort of like Satanist agenda. And I can't really blame them for thinking that. But is it really anything more than a gimmick? In an interview by Jeff Hanneman, rhythm guitarist of Slayer, who died of liver failure this year, may he rest in peace, provides an explanation of why they chose to use such imagery in their music. So Jeff, what attracts Slayer to Satanism? And he says, it provides such extreme lyrics, all that anarchic violence, ripping people apart. We were kind of serious about it when we started, but now it's old hat. What were you serious about? We read a lot from the Satanic Bible. It's not quite the opposite of a normal Bible. A lot of its principles are just about being yourself. If you want to do something, you do it. If you want to have affairs, you can, but we never hold daily rituals. Slayer are not into Christianity in a big way, but all that talk of read books and worshipping Satan sounds pretty religious to me. Isn't Satanism the same old crap in reverse? And he says, yes, it's the same thing. You can get caught up in it just like any religion. What we're attacking in a roundabout way is the Christian TV con man. It's unbelievable the amount of money stolen in the name of Jesus. And who can blame Slayer for attacking the Christian right, who have not only wrongly accused them of corrupting the youth, but have also made wild claims about their influence on violent acts? Which brings me to the next stereotype. These loose associations that heavy metal contributed to the tragedy are the epitome of false correlations. It's like that old statistical example of theirs between the amount of ice cream trucks in a city to violence. Supposedly the more ice cream trucks there are, the more it's likely for a violent crime to occur. But it's actually because violent crime occurs during the warmer temperatures when everyone is outside, blood boiling in the inner city heat. The same can be said about these demented kids. Of course they're going to listen to music that portrays evil, but that doesn't mean that it's the foundation for crazed psychopathic rampages. The following is an excerpt from an article on CNN's site that really makes a strong case against this half-baked theory. For anthropologist, documentary filmmaker, and self-confessed metalhead Sam Dunn, heavy metal is often used as a scapegoat to distract from the thoroughly more complicated societal problems surrounding such incidents. He says, "I think people look at heavy metal and label it for all sorts of things because we need easy answers to complex questions," Dunn says. "I think that it's easy to target a heavy metal band for inciting violence for making kids turn to a cult than it is to actually look at real problems in the real world." This last stereotype is actually a huge pet peeve of mine. Number 3 is the idea that heavy metal is just brutish, nonsensical noise. As a former member of a thrash metal band, it really actually gets to me. One of the most insulting and rarely addressed criticisms heavy metal fans come across is that heavy metal is just loud, obnoxious, talentless, or that it lacks direction. This can be one of the most frustrating things for a fan of heavy metal to argue against, since part of the appeal is the chaotic sound, and of course, because music is so subjective. Here's a clip from Bet You Can't Play This, featuring Chris Broderick of Megadeth. These videos are kind of challenged for shredding, made typically by virtuoso guitarists. If you do think it's talentless, I hope it changes your mind.
Alright, that was a 651 in the key of E minor. Started off with a C major and led to a B major and ended, of course, with an E minor.
Sam
we just want
Dunn,
people to
in
watch
his
Metal
documentary,
Evolution and
Metal
get
Evolution,
a better
really puts a
understanding
cherry
of
on
the
top of
story
my
of heavy
rant
metal
here
and
in
where
the
it
following
comes from
clip.
and how it's evolved. I think even though we keep making films about this music, there still is that preconceived notion that it is it's sort of disconnected from everything else. It has no history, or that it's just a bunch of guys who like to smash beer cans on their heads and listen to heavy metal music, right, and throw the devil horns. But I think we just want people to get a better sense of where it comes from, and that it's a dynamic genre of music that's changed a lot over the last 40 years.
At the end of the day, people are going to judge you no matter what you do or who you are. I'd like to end off with Marilyn Manson. In this clip from Bowling for Columbine, he defends himself against those who blamed him for influencing the Columbine murderers who did in fact listen to his music. I myself am not a big fan of him, but he's a perfect example of a defying the stereotypes in his articulated response.
And how perfect that was the two things that we were going to talk about with the upcoming election. And also then we forgot about Monica Lewinsky, and we forgot about the president was shooting bombs overseas, yet I'm a bad guy because I've sing some rock and roll songs. And who's a bigger influence, the president or Marilyn Manson? I'd like to think me, but I'm going to go with the president.
Do you know that the day that Columbine happened, the United States dropped more bombs on Kosovo than any other time during that war?
I do know that, and I think that that's really ironic, you know, that nobody said, well, maybe the president had an influence on this violent behavior, because that's not the way the media wants to take it and spin and turn it into fear, because then you're watching television, you're watching the news, you're being pumped full of fear, there's floods, there's AIDS, there's murder, cut to commercial. Buy the Acura, buy the Colgate. If you have bad breath, they're not going to talk to you. If you got pimples, the girl's not going to fuck you. And it's just this, it's a campaign of fear and consumption. And that's what I think that it's all based on, is the whole idea that keep everyone afraid and they'll consume. Mm-hmm. And that's really as simple as it can be boiled down to.
Right. If you were to talk directly to the kids at Columbine or the people in that community, what would you say to them if they were here right now?
I wouldn't say a single word to them. I would listen to what they have to say, and that's what no one did.